Hmm.
So what do you think? Do you have anything you want to talk about this morning?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we want to talk about that article that I passed on about the
Yeah,
rot economy. That's one possibility. Um,
the rot economy.
yeah,
Refresh my memory because I looked at it, but I don't remember.
yeah. This guy Ed Zitron, and
That's
I
right.
can't remember what his claim to fame is. But he's got a blog out there, and he um, he kind of does this rant. So his position was that uh, we're not really getting to any true innovation. We're just kind of stuck in this cycle, and it's because a lot of venture capital, a lot of cheap venture capital, was poured into the system, and whether an idea had legs or not, it's like that's fine, because not because it uh, added value for customers, but because venture capitalists thought, hey, this is something that can make us a lot of money,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So
Yeah, there's been a giant flushing sound over the past couple years as the zero interest rate. I didn't even realize this, but like we went to yeah, I saw a graph of the interest rates in the United States and they went to zero at the great financial crisis in '07,
mm-hmm.
and they stayed there until I think they went up a little bit in 18 and then they came back down in the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
to back to zero, and then they went and now they've jumped up from like 0 to 5, whatever they're at now. And so, yeah, a lot of the froth and the BS that we've seen apparently is because, well, I might as well throw this money at you. It didn't cost me anything. I mean, this is
Right.
obviously a vast oversimplification, but why not? And now people have to, like, you have to actually run a business. You have to be profitable. You have to pay attention to whether people like this stuff or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, like, to your point, if you're not creating value for somebody and they're not willing to give you money for it, like now, not some hypothetical tomorrow, but like it just doesn't work anymore. You go out of business. So maybe there's a reckon. It feels like there's a reckoning happening. That's at least that's what I hear from people. Is like it's much harder. So yeah,
Yeah, and what's interesting, um, they talk about. He talks about a lot of these companies have not made a profit. Take Uber for example. They can't be profitable to save their lives. And honestly, I do look at some of those business models, and I think, again, I want to choose my words carefully here, but I have a hard time coming up with a more palatable word than leech.
so you think they're taking more than they're giving in terms of value?
Yeah, I do. I
Interesting.
mean, for a long time, you saw Amazon was not profitable, but at some point they did become profitable, and that was because they stumbled upon AWS, and that's really where they make their money. Um, and
Well,
go
for
ahead.
years, so for years they would be they didn't they deliberately not earn a profit because they took that money that would have been profit and reinvested it for, and investors for years were willing to be like, okay, no dividends, no
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
profits, because we believe in the long term vision that
Right,
eventually when this thing turns, it's going to be enormous, and I think that's what
right,
happened, right? Yeah.
right. But when you think about things like DoorDash or just these other I'm not calling them out specifically, but um, these food delivery companies, they insert themselves between the customer and the restaurant, and they take a 30% skim off the top. Like, are you delivering that much value? And no, I think it was a head scratcher for me for a long time. I thought, I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's not a win for the restaurant. I mean, they're coughing up bucks.
Right.
I mean, for a customer that doesn't want to get up off their duff and go get their food, but the restaurant can provide a delivery service, and I understand, every restaurant can't pay a delivery person or something like that. But even then, it's almost as if they took a model where you could have a common delivery person, you know, servicing 3 or 4 restaurants, and just pumped it up on steroids, and it became this monster that it's like, oh, well, here's a business model that you know, we can skim our money off the top and make a true business out of it. And is that really a business? I mean, you're inserting yourself between the customer and the folks that are delivering value, presumably,
Yeah.
just so you can skim a little bit off for yourself.
Yeah, my thoughts on this have changed a lot. I mean, I first started using Uber Eats and DoorDash in when the world shut down in 2020, and I think like everybody else, I thought it was, it's a good idea, a good solution at the time. And honestly, I think that it feels like the service was better in 2020, 21, because I feel like I stopped using these things over the past year or two. I can't remember exactly when, but like, you're right. I mean, a $15 thing that you could go pick up turns into a $45 thing, and it's not better. In fact, it's cold a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I had this experience. I kept doing things like, okay, I'll pay you some money for priority delivery, which means you pick it up from the restaurant and you bring it straight to me. That's what I understood it to be. And that happened a few times, and it was great, and then it stopped happening. And you're right. I think the experience for the end user isn't better necessarily, isn't valuable a lot of the time. And the restaurant doesn't appreciate it. It's right, because it cuts into their margins.
They're
What's
thin margins. Yeah.
They're already thin margins. Absolutely. So it hasn't been worth it to me to use it in at least a year. What stuck out to me? So Travis Kalanick, the guy who created Uber in the first place, when it's just about transportation. I don't know if you saw this, but he has been working, and I haven't heard any updates in a while, but he is working on this idea of cloud kitchens. Have you heard about this?
I don't know. I don't know if I've heard of cloud kitchens. I think I know what you're talking about, but explain to me what you're.
So, like Uber for transportation makes sense, right? Because, well, anyway, but the Uber Eats, I think my understanding is the idea is that it's structurally inefficient, right? Because you got a restaurant that's set up to be a restaurant, and you got people who are sitting at home, and in between. That's like it's too modular, right? It's too inefficient because you have the restaurant that's designed to be a restaurant, and people with cars who can work part-time, and people sitting at home, and but there's too much like structural. It's like remember somebody was going to make a cell phone like a few years ago, and it was going to be like modular blocks. And so you could buy the base block, and then you could buy a camera block or a flashlight block or a network block, and you could just upgrade your cell phone as you go, and you could have complete control over the blocks. And the problem is, it's a shitty product. It's a shitty because it's the reason why Apple uses glue and doesn't have a user replaceable battery, because you have to. It's like everything in life. It's a trade-off. You have to give up weight. You have to give up functionality. It's a smaller battery. Like, to make it as efficient as possible for everybody involved, you have to integrate more. And I think it's similar. So the cloud kitchen idea, Travis, my understanding is, instead of having a restaurant that people can come in and order and blah blah blah, and like there's multiple ways to interface with it, you can also have a bolt-on delivery service. A cloud kitchen can be just like this box. It's just a building somewhere with gas and water and electric and sewer. And the idea is it's just for creating meals to be delivered. So it's maximally, if you don't need the expensive real estate to be on the big road, You don't need signage. You don't need all of this stuff. You don't need,
Mm-hmm.
the fire marshal doesn't care how, I mean, I'm sure he cares, but it's not about it's not a public place you can go to. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't need parking. And so the costs are way lower in terms of creating the food. And I guess probably they would have drivers be part of like you probably wouldn't have Uber Eats drivers bolted on contractually. You probably have employees, so that's more efficient. And
Right.
anyway, it seems like, because the idea that I can order a cheeseburger and it comes straight to me immediately and it's really good quality is still a valuable proposition. I might still do that, but not when the restaurant has a certain set of contracts and interests and the driver has a certain set of contracts and interests and they don't necessarily line up because they're not being managed in an integrated way. The cloud
Mm-hmm.
kitchen is like this service where you order a cheeseburger and they take everything is in one managed package or system. And so anyway, he's been working on that for years as far as I know, and I expect that it makes a ton of sense to me. I know that there must be, like everything, the closer you get to it, the harder it gets, but
Mm-hmm.
I gotta believe that's going to happen soon. It seems like a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It is exactly what I was thinking. I hadn't heard it called cloud kitchen. I can't remember the term I had heard, but anyway, it's almost like, and I'm not denigrating the idea because I think there's probably value there, but it's almost like then it becomes like generic. So you remember the old,
Yeah.
remember back when generics showed up in the grocery store?
I remember cans that were white labels and the black, like simple, and it said beans,
Beans, exactly.
paper towel, like from Soviet Russia or something. It's like, I don't know, man. I need a little bit more branding than that. You need to,
And for a long time, it took a while to get traction. A local food store that'll go unnamed was doing that, and I was kind of observing because they were a client, and I always wondered, are you getting any traction here with your generic stuff? And in time, they did. But they admitted certainly people have brand loyalty. And so there is no brand loyalty. And there was this perception that, well, if it's generic, it's substandard. Well, the fact is, that's not necessarily true. There's a breakfast cereal company that, was making, oats for
yeah,
themselves, but they also would supply the, what do they call it, off label or whatever,
white label, I think.
white label. So it's it basically became the generic oats that you saw on the shelf
But
or
so they're
something.
the same oats that you get
Hmm.
in the oval thing with the Pennsylvania guy with the hat, and it's in the same. It was a package that just says oats on it. It's the same product, right?
Generally, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But we feel
So,
differently about that as
but we
consumers.
we do feel differently, and so that's this whole thing. We're very brand centric, at least in this country here, and so we identify with brands. The brand becomes part of our personality. This is what I buy, and frankly, the industry, food industry, drug industry, everybody has really tagged off of that. The whole
Yeah.
advertising industry, frankly, is based around brand loyalty and building that brand.
Yeah.
And so this is a long way of getting to. So if you have these cloud kitchens, is there any brand there? I
What are
mean,
you going to
or is
get?
it just
Generic spaghetti
generic
or
food?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think you probably put your finger on maybe one of their biggest problems. Like, why would I go to a class? Okay, so maybe it's hot when it gets here, but what is it? Like, because Yeah, I know. I can see it good. Like you could look at it either good or bad. Like the whole brand thing. Like in some cases, I mean, it seems like another way of people just like needing to deal with complexity. Like there's 50 cans of different bean, but like I know that like these people do beans this way, and that's what I like. So I'm just going to go with that, as opposed to having a new puzzle to figure out in terms of everything on my shopping list. Like brands give you a way to navigate the world easier,
Hmm.
but so there's good reasons for it. But yeah, like what is the name? So yeah, it would have to. Yeah, that's a whole brand, like defining what that thing is and why you'd want to do business with them. And yeah, I bet they're working on that. That must be a lot of what they're working on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the quality of the food, the cooking, could be just as good or even better. Um, but you're going to be trying to compete with restaurants that have, maybe known chefs. Maybe they've established a name, a track record. And do I want Italian food? No, I'll order something from Italian Kitchen. Or I could go to the Cloud Kitchen and get some, linguine. I think I'll stick with Italian Kitchen.
Yeah, yeah, you can see how it's not, because it's not like if I go to Wendy's, Dave is going to make me a cheeseburger, or Ronald McDonald is not going to
Hmm.
make my fry. It's all, yeah. So they would have to. I'm trying to think of what would be effective on me if Travis launches his cloud kitchen. I would have to know that, like you said, there's a focus on quality. Like the whole reason to do this would be the quality, right? That would be the reason you launched a business in the first place, is you'd want to give people. So we're going to make really good food and find some story behind that, and we're going to get it to you quicker than anybody else. Like there's no handoff there. Maybe that's the agile connection. There's no handoff between the restaurant and the delivery partner. It's like our delivery guys are just waiting. They're like poised, like, on a waiting to, as soon as a thing is ready, we just go straight in the car and shoot straight to you. Like they'd have to, like, it would be a new product actually, because that doesn't exist at this
Right.
point. Yeah, the
And,
integrated product.
and maybe when you think about it, trying to scale up something like that is a challenge because you can't realistically have a fleet of drivers sitting there waiting for a dozen orders to come in, and they're sitting there idle, and then guess what, 24 orders come in all of a sudden, and you want your stuff instantaneously. So they're out, going to some far-flung area. The time it takes them to get back, the logistics of it make it a little bit difficult. Now, you could make it work by just cutting the driver out and drone delivering it.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, at some point, for sure. Yes, absolutely. I'm wondering. Interesting. So what you said there piqued my, because I was thinking. So here's the question that popped in my mind. Does this company need to be agile? Do they need to use agility at all?
I think
And
every company that starts, anybody that you're starting today, if you don't have the mindset of agility baked into your culture, you will not survive.
is that because you're facing significant uncertainty and you can't? You are.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you don't know specifically what to do, how to do it. You have to define the valuable problems and then iteratively work towards solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though you think you know the problems, even though you think you know the solutions, reality is you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole reason why we go through product market fit and all the pivoting and everything that's required when you've got a startup, because the fact is you have a lot of assumptions that until you've proved those, you have an idea. That's all. And ideas are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, isn't that right? Yeah, I've had people have asked me to sign non-disclosure agreements about ideas. I'm like, look, I get it, but really, the idea is not. The execution is what's hard and what's valuable, right? There's a dozen people with this idea right now. You don't realize it, but I had a question. So, so what you said, you can't have the drivers just sitting there waiting for orders. That sounds like cost.
Well, yeah. I mean, the clock is ticking. You're paying them, hopefully a reasonable salary or whatever. And when you think about it, they're out on a run. If you're trying to push instantaneous delivery,
Yeah,
so you got he's not going to be able to wait for 2 or 3 orders to stack up, which would be more efficient.
yeah,
And they've got to go out. They've got a delivery 10 kilometers, 6, 7 miles, and then now they've got to come back.
yeah.
And so that's time being wasted. It's necessary time, but the logistics of it means that if you get a lot of orders coming in, somebody's not going to get their order instantaneously. Is either that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So this is a complex problem that you would have to. This is a great place to apply iteration. The reason it's stuck in my head is that like because what you said, you can't just pay people to sit and wait, and we have said different things to people at clients, right? It's not about reducing cost, right? Because sometimes managers have a cost reduction mentality, like they want to make sure that they are not ever, like they want to make sure people are always moving, and that leads to excess work in process, which leads to excess context switching, which means, oh, maybe this is the difference. In a knowledge work, means you can't focus, and that's so. But okay, so you're saying because this is more of and so what we've said is like, don't focus necessarily on the cost reduction, focus on the flow. It's totally fine to have people sitting around idle, as long as when the work comes in, they are ready. And the work, you want people waiting for work. You don't want work waiting for people, is a way to say it in knowledge and creative spaces. But this is different because delivering food is not knowledge work.
Right.
Is maybe
Right.
okay.
Exactly. It's a different model, and I would argue that in the situations that we're in, people are not idle; they're thinking,
Yes, great
and
point.
thinking is actually valuable.
Yeah, Yeah.
We're not hiring just a bunch of coders
right.
to develop, a
To do a
software
bunch of
solution or
mechanical
something.
stuff.
Right. We want them to think. We're hiring them for their brains, not for their coding ability. And frankly, if you hire the right people that can think innovatively, that's of greater value than even, well, we can get rid of all these coders by using AI. Well, yeah, but if that's all you're hiring are coders to code, well, then you're missing kind of the point. You should be hiring developers to use their brains for
Right.
better ways to deliver.
And if that's what you're doing, then AI is awesome because it's like going from a shovel to again, I'm using a physical metaphor, but to a hydraulic, like you're multiplying their ability to do the work, but you still need somebody to understand the problem and to validate the solution and come up with different ways to use whatever tools are available. Like they should be surprising you, right? If you are organizing knowledge workers the right way. It doesn't make sense to hire a bunch of smart people and then tell them what to do. you should be like saying, here's what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and here's what success would be. What do you think? Like, that's
How
why
would
you're
you go
here.
about it? Right.
Yeah. Totally.
Anything less diminishes the intellectual capabilities of the person that you hired. I mean, you just code for me. You
Well,
don't need
and
that.
no, and we know it's demotivating, right? You're leaving value on the, because according to Daniel Pink, it's autonomy, mastery, and purpose
Mm-hmm.
that people find really engaging at work. It's what causes them to find new stuff and stay engaged, find new solutions. So if you're taking away their autonomy, I mean, I wouldn't want to do that. It's
Right.
not interesting to me. Yeah.
I mean, we ask people to be engaged. We want them to be engaged, and we bemoan the fact that, oh, all these folks are so unengaged. And, well, yeah, I mean,
Your to-do
you're
list just isn't that interesting. I'm sorry. Yeah.
so, yeah, no wonder they're demotivated. Um, so, anyway, we digressed there. But the the whole notion of this kitchen, this cloud kitchen, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. But it's a different model, and in that model, you don't want, or you want to minimize the amount of downtime,
Yeah.
because you do want to maximize the fact that, and it's not even just about the people that are delivering, or the mechanism, the delivery mechanism. It's about getting value to the customer faster. And at the end of the day, you can't hire a large enough fleet. If that were successful and you were to scale it up, I defy you to make that truly efficient, and which means profitable.
Yeah.
Because if it's inefficient, then you're not going to be profitable. And
So you'd want
you
to.
can't hire that many delivery people
Yeah.
to get all the orders out within a certain radius.
So what I hear you saying is you want to lean less on agile principles and more on the principles of flow and lean, more of a manufacturing type.
I think it's both, actually. You do need to solve the problem. You do need agility. You do need to pick your way through and figure out what works before you scale up. Those values of agility need to be baked into whatever enterprise you end up rolling out. But then, yes, the principles of flow and lean do have to get baked in, and should be baked in order to make it as lean an operation as possible to enhance the profitability. So it's both, honestly, I think.
So because it's a lots of uncertainty, a rapidly changing environment, use the principles of agility to define the valuable problems and get feedback quickly and try new stuff. But then also from a manufacturing point of view, find the waste, find the delays, find the all the forms of waste that we have in lean,
Mm-hmm.
and and pay attention to cycle times and make sure that stuff is as efficient as possible. Request to all the way from request to delivery. So
Right.
it's a mix of all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds difficult.
And that is why there's such a high failure rate. I mean, when you think about startups, it's complex.
Yeah.
And you can't just say, oh, well, I got a great idea. I'm going to build this up and roll it out. And oh, by the way, somebody give me some money for this. And sometimes, if you're a real good salesperson, you could sell. And this is kind of to Ed's point. If you can sell a venture capitalist or an angel or somebody, if you can sell them on giving you money for it because they think they're going to be investing in the next big thing,
Yeah.
whether it has legs or not, that's kind of what's fueled a lot of the ideas in air quotes. But now, and I think it's not a bad thing that capital's gotten more expensive. Good. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I get it why we had years of low interest rates and low cost of capital. But, when I hear people complaining about, oh my God, interest rates are high, 6-7%, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what? You didn't live through the 80s and the 70s where if we had 6, 7, 8% interest rates on mortgages and stuff, man, we would have been cheering because those were the days of 14, 15, 16%. And so there's a lot of complaints now, but we got growth through the 80s. But people valued the capital a lot more, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. The stuff that is free, you don't value that that's a principle that humans. And I'm not in the VC world, but I do listen to VCs talk various places, mostly on podcasts. And the stories that I hear is that, like, when in the zero interest rate environment, people would go looking for money, and there was the FOMO was huge, and as a result, just like any natural market phenomenon, people who were looking to invest didn't want to miss out on deals. And so what would happen is people would, sometimes they didn't do all of their due diligence, right? They wouldn't run numbers. They wouldn't confirm stuff. They wouldn't get documentation. They would just be like, okay, here, because if I don't give you the money and invest, somebody else is going to give you the money and invest, and they're not requiring the due diligence. So I'll have to, if I don't jump in, I'll miss out. And so a lot of stuff got funded that maybe shouldn't have gotten funded. And now what's happening is people are requiring that stuff, and they want to see milestones, right? I'll give you this much money, and then you demonstrate that you created this much value. Like, let's take the big hairy problem, let's break it down. Let's say here's the objective evidence you can give me all these times along the way that it's actually working, right? So it feels like a much more healthy. Again, I don't see it directly, but it feels like there's a much more healthy dynamic in terms of how we use that resource, capital. So, yeah, it makes sense. Anything that's free, people tend to not value. It seems like one instance.
The whole idea of, okay, I'll give you $1 million, seed capital, and go off and make this thing work. Well, that's foolish. Show me that it can work. Show me that it's got legs. Show me that you can get some traction. And so in that case, as an angel or a venture capitalist, somebody supplying seed money, you need to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Show me, you're a stakeholder essentially. And so show me on a regular basis that you're making progress towards what you say is going to be delivered. And if we need to pivot, understand that as early as possible so that we can get to a plan that works.
Right. Without the check-ins, how would we even know? We would miss that signal that we need to pivot because we wouldn't be seeing red lights blinking
Mm-hmm.
based on some metrics that we didn't even establish in the first place. We're just trusting you. Yeah, so we're missing it. Yeah, there's reasons. It's like a scrum team not noticing that half their stuff didn't finish in the sprint and just barreling forward. It's like, no, we need a conversation here to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what's not working. Yeah, interesting. All right.
And that's the end of this Agile thing.